Welcome to Transforming Us podcast. I'm Jess.
And I'm Tamara. We're trauma-informed relationship coaches and old friends here to discuss common patterns and what leads us to paths of security.
You know, people are feeling overwhelmed and disconnected in their painful relationships, which often leads to mental health crises.
We want to share some new ideas and practices to help you cultivate curiosity, compassion, and to redeem the patterns in your relationships, starting with yourself.
Join us on this journey of transforming us. Grab a cup of coffee and let's dive in. Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. Today we are talking about fearful avoidant attachment style. So we're doing a deep dive into this conversation. We've talked in previous episodes about the anxious preoccupied and the dismissive avoidant. And so, as you'll hear, this is a little bit of both. But before we jump into that, tell me what you've been up to recently, Tamara.
I haven't.
Hold on. I just realized you're Travis. Let's redo this. And can you change your name?
Yes.
Oh, wait. Can I change it? Hold on. Let me see if I can change it. Oh, no, I can't.
Let me see how I don't know how to change this.
You might have to.
I see. Yeah. I can do it.
Okay. If not, if that doesn't work, you have to leave and then put in your name and then come back in.
There.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Well, we'll just start over right here.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we are discussing the fearful avoidant attachment style. So we're going to do a deep dive on all that entails. And we've, in previous episodes, talked about the anxious preoccupied as well as the dismissive avoidant. And we're just loving helping to unpack the patterns of these different insecure styles. So tell me, Tamara, what have you been up to?
I'm doing good. I have been coming off of, I think I mentioned in the last episode, my family had gone to St. Thomas, and now that I'm back in my studio, I am creating art based around some of the photos that I got from our trip. So I just got through doing my first painting and really liked how it turned out of a boat. So I am, that's what I've been doing my other parts of time. Yeah. And then motherhood and life and sports and all the things. Yeah.
Well, I love that you're diving into another series. One of my favorite things that you do is paint boats.
Thank you.
And for anybody who doesn't know, Tamara has just this very airy, light, uses a lot of blues and greens and some pastels and just very beautiful stuff. So
thank you.
You want to share your website in case anybody's curious?
Sure. It's tamarabrownart.com. And that's also my Instagram handle is Tamara Brown Art. Yeah. So I love creating very much.
You're so good at it.
Thank you.
It's beautiful and it's so therapeutic. I recently got together with a new friend of mine. And as we got to know each other, we also did some watercolor minis and sat and drank coffee outside.
Oh, that's so awesome.
It was really nice to get to know somebody for the first time doing something like that. I don't typically do that.
Right.
But it was very connecting because we were also playing around with just different ways of using the materials. And she was a little bit new to the watercolor markers and,
That's so fun. That's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. What did y'all end up painting?
Where?
What did y'all paint with your watercolor?
I like to do landscapes mostly because they kind of just come from my memory and they typically turn out in a way that I'm hoping for. Yeah. I don't like looking at photographs and studying them and trying to copy things. I just kind of go off what's in my head.
Yeah. So I love that. I love your landscapes. I love your mountains. They're beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The mountains are beautiful. Mm-hmm. So there is something just so regulating about doing something that's just right in front of you. I'm sure you experience that with painting, just being in the present moment and using your hands to create something, get you out of your head, get out of your emotions, out of the stress of of all the things that you're
Yeah.
trying to manage.
Yeah. It's like, it's weird how I feel like that creative space, and for those who, have that creative something in their life outlet, like it is interesting how, kind of ties back to, the body and the mind and all that stuff, but how it just almost like when I'm in my studio and I'm focused on what I'm about to do, like I feel like everything else just is silenced. It's like I'm just like me and my brush in that moment, feeling what I am when I'm about to paint. And it's like, it's just so invigorating for your being, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel so much more like myself and recharged and centered when I leave that space after
Mm-hmm.
I've been in there. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And even if people don't do it as a hot, like, as a, as a job, like just having something for yourself is so wonderful. Like, even just like you talked about, like with somatic parts of us, like working the
Mm-hmm.
mind and working your hands and creating
Yeah.
something, whether it's just only you're the one that ever sees it. It's like, it does something to you and your
Yeah.
soul, it's good for you.
Yeah, that's something I introduced to this friend is this neurographic art process, which is really it's kind of abstract. It's not even about creating something that is you're going to hang on the wall. It's really about the process of just tuning in and um, making connections of like lines and shapes and the smooth movements of like running over those lines multiple
Mm-hmm.
times is so calming for your whole being. So
Yeah.
I love that and
Yeah,
very, very therapeutic.
for sure.
But yeah, so as we jump into this conversation about fearful avoidance,
Mm-hmm.
um, how would you say you would describe kind of the inner world in a nutshell of this style?
Well, this is definitely the most, I think, like this style, because it embodies the anxious and the dismissive side. It's like a mix of those. It's like you kind of never know. It's like a mixed bag. You don't really know what you're going to get. And, the fearful avoidant often will swing to an anxious or more of an avoidant side, also depending on the situation, depending on the friend or the partner or whatever, whoever they're in this relationship with, based on how they're acting. So
Mm-hmm.
it's harder to read and it's harder to predict than I feel like some of the other ones, because they can go back and forth.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, kind
but
of the marker of a fearful avoidant is that they're not predictable,
right,
that they flip flop all the time and you never know
right,
what to expect is kind of one of
right,
those clues.
right.
Um, but they're definitely anxious,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
definitely have a high anxiety as far as like we talk about the scale of anxiety
right.
and sadness and anger and things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. It's just those different wounds get triggered, by different situations, and then it ends up affecting if they're gonna push pull, how they're gonna push pull. Are they gonna come forward, or are they gonna pull away?
Yeah. Yeah, they
So,
want that person. They very much want that connection, but then they're also kind of afraid of being
hmm,
overwhelmed by the connection or the other person needing too much or
hmm,
there's a lot of self-sabotage behaviors.
right,
um, but then they sometimes create that space kind of like the dismissive avoidant might. But
right.
so what would you say as far as their their sadness and anger, like?
Um, I mean, I feel like they can definitely stay in a place of sadness, because you're experiencing those two different sides of the insecure attachment styles. And so a lot of times they have, these deeper rooted, like if you were to scale it all back and peel it back like an onion, they have, just wounds from growing up where they either had, it could be like we talked about the big T or the little T traumas. And, avoidant could come from a great family. It's just, depending on their caregivers, if their caregivers were maybe inconsistent, where one minute they're, the kid is being affirmed and loved well and feeling loved, and then something else, could happen, and then they feel like that love is taken or that love isn't shown the same way, and it can just make them feel like a little, you know what I mean? Like they didn't know how to expect. They didn't, you know what I'm saying? It wasn't as consistent.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so, and it could look like, it could be like a very normal nuclear family, but, say there's a lot of kids in the house, and, sometimes the parent, might have more patience that day and
Mhm.
be this way. And then something else very similar happens. But then the
Yeah.
next week, the parent might be like, okay, I don't have time. You know what I mean? Like, and so they have a
Yeah.
different reaction. Um,
Yeah.
a
Yeah,
lot
I
of,
think I think a really important distinction too is that the fear kind of runs the show. And so the fear might cause you to anxiously like try to fix things and lean in and help, or the fear could cause you to kind of run away and disengage.
yeah.
And like you mentioned, in even in a great family, even in a family that tried their best, there was some form of a trust break that
Hmm.
even if it was the child's perception, something made them feel as if they can't trust, and there's an inner sense of fear with their, I mean, it's kind of a safety thing,
Hmm.
um, the felt safety
Right.
system in their family of origin.
Yeah.
So they just don't trust the
Right.
people that are tasked with caring for them because maybe they got too much going on, and you're like, you're a mess. I can't trust you to help me with my mess.
Right.
That might be a common experience for a fearful avoidant.
Right. And I find a lot of times with the fearful, they can have a lot of protest behavior. So, like, say they're in, you know, some type of something happens, and, there's some type of conflict, or they get their feelings hurt or something, and they can push away, and they're pushing the other person away. And it's not even that they're really wanting to push the person away. Like, they're actually wanting the person, sometimes even testing the person to see how willing are you willing to show up for me? Are you going to fight for me? Are you going to, like, they want them to come back to prove they're trustworthy, or that they're not going to leave, or even though their behavior on the outside would look like I'm pushing you far away. You know what I mean? So it's
Hmm.
like, um, it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and that emotional reaction is high, so a lot of times it could look like being triggered to anger, but
Hmm.
really what's going on is that anxiety and fear
Right.
beneath the surface, and self-protection is what the anger is, the self-protective.
Right.
I'm not gonna let you hurt me. I'm not gonna allow this, um, or just getting really big because that's all they know.
Right.
If somebody is kind of in between trying to figure out where they fall, your anxious, preoccupied person is most of the time going to shrink back and
Hmm.
be very compliant
They'll have
and
more of a fawn response.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like the fearfuls definitely are like more of the fighters,
Mm-hmm.
like, I feel like you have the the anxious is going to want to people please a lot of times, and has a harder time holding boundaries because they're just fearful. They don't want people to leave. So they will try to, accommodate, even if it is not good for them. Um, Whereas the dismissive, I feel like they're not as willing to show the emotions. You know what I mean? They're going to kind of compartmentalize or be more stoic.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the fearful can kind of get in there and just, they can fight it
Yeah.
out, or kind of go back and forth, push pull.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, yeah.
Yeah. High on the emotion scale for sure.
Yes. Yeah.
And so a lot of that comes from their issues with self-esteem. They
Hmm.
don't have a great view of themselves, but they also don't have a very good view of other people.
Hmm.
So they kind of have this negative bias on all around.
Right. Yeah.
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 So,
They have a hard time trusting, and then even sometimes maybe even trusting themselves,
mhm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think boundaries, we've talked about with the other styles. This one, again, going back to being unpredictable, boundaries, sometimes they might be really, really rigid, and they might be like out of a protective response, like, no way am I helping you,
Hmm.
or, when they didn't need to be that strong. And sometimes they're very porous, or, soft boundaries, I guess you could say,
Hmm.
that they don't take care of themselves or set boundaries, and they say yes too quickly
Right.
and then get overwhelmed. So it really in terms of boundaries, I feel like a fearful avoidant is all over the place here. And some
Mhm.
of it is just that subconscious, like whatever the fear is driving is going to determine what their boundaries look like.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like boundaries are one of those things. I feel like for all attachment styles, obviously the secure leaning people have learned to have healthier boundaries, but I do feel like boundaries are something that if we're not modeled or taught, like we do have to kind of get to a point in life where you have to like learn what does that look like to have healthy boundaries. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that it's actually the very thing that will protect the relationships is the healthy boundaries. Because I
Yeah.
think people think of boundaries as like boundaries. That's like sounds very, you know what I mean? Like, but no,
Mm-hmm.
it's like it's actually a healthy thing. It's what keeps the relationships um healthy, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
balanced.
And I also think to have the capacity to set healthy boundaries, there also has to be a measure of self-soothing to be able to be clear on what you need, what you're okay with, what you're not okay with, and not come from a place of reactivity,
Hmm.
which is kind of where the fearful avoidant can live and stay from
Right.
that self-protective place. And so to set healthy boundaries, I think first a lot of times, and we'll talk more about this in the future, all these just different tools for what does it look like to really access uh, resources, things that help you calm yourself down.
Right.
Um, but that does have to come first.
Right. And I think it just also shows just how important it is to like work on yourself. You know what I mean? Like I think that's
Hmm.
what like I always think about, kind of like we were talking about earlier. It's like when you can have the self-awareness of who you are, and then your triggers and your like the just you as a person, um and
Yeah.
being able to work on those things. Like it's like once you start making those strides with awareness in the work, it's like all of a sudden you can see it just like flourish out and how it affects the connections
Hmm.
that you have. Like things just all of a sudden start feeling like healthier. It's because
Yeah.
you're healthier, you know?
Hmm.
It's cool.
Yeah. Well, let's talk for a minute about you and I. And like
Hmm.
we both very much identify with this, beginning from a place of fearful avoidance, then
Right.
growing in secure behaviors and secure ways of thinking. And it takes practice. It takes so
Right.
much practice to lay down some of those
Right.
childhood wounds and some of the
Hmm.
things, which we'll get into what those wounds are. But talking about connection versus independence, do you want to share from the perspective of a fearful avoidant, but also your own experience, and I can share mine?
Hmm. Sure. Well, for me, connections were very important to me. I shared this in, I think, a recent podcast. I can't remember if it was the last one, but just, growing up, I did not have a father in the home. I did not know my father. So it was just me and my mom, which I ended up having a lot of absent father wounds later on I had to address. But I remember seeing, the connections my mom had where her friendships and her relationship with her parents were so vital to her. And it was like, for me, I saw her friendships were like an extension of family. So I can see how for me in my life, my friendships were and I was an only child. So I didn't have, siblings. So my friendships were like the connection was very important. But I did have, I think because of, which I won't go into much, but I do think because there was a father wound there was a piece of me as far as the independence. Like I felt like something, it was a deficit wound for sure, um, of feeling like a little unworthy. Like this person left and they're choosing not to be in my life. Like, why do they not want to be in my, you know what I mean? Like feeling like I have to prove myself. So I found myself kind of growing up having this like very independent, like, I want to prove my worth. And so like I wanted to, like, if I get my mind to something, like I would do it. You know what I mean? Like I would try to be the best at what I was doing. I could see a lot of the Enneagram 3 in me, but also I did have the leaning of the 2, with the relationships, and then
Mm-hmm.
the 4 that lends to the creativity. So, but yeah, I feel like, for me personally, And I think for other, fearful avoidant, I think there is that push pull of like wanting that connection. But then also like there is an independent piece. Like I didn't want to have someone that was like too clingy to me. You know what I mean? Like, or, but then if I felt like the connection didn't feel safe, then I would find myself feeling more like I need to like cling more so. Do you know what I mean? Like it was
Mm-hmm.
like I would find myself, it depended on the stability and the trust that I had with the other person.
Mm-hmm.
So if that person showed up secure and was just like showing up and I felt loved and I felt balanced and I felt like they were playing games and they were just being sincere, then I didn't feel those things. It's just if I
Mm-hmm.
had like, especially like a dating relationship, I think that's where you can really see it a lot. But like,
Yeah.
you know, how
Yeah,
it magnifies that.
for sure.
What about
Yeah.
you?
You know, it's really interesting because, for so long, I really did think I was more of just the classic anxious because I didn't see the avoidant side.
Mhm.
Um, but looking back, knowing what I know now, early childhood, I feel like I kind of didn't quite fit the mold, I guess you could say. I was different. I was highly emotional, highly sensitive, was sent away a lot because of my emotions, like sent it to my room to cry. And I think that my parents were wonderful and they loved me and they tried their best to understand all the big feelings that I had. But because I wasn't naturally as able to self-soothe, and there was, some different there was a season in my childhood where I think my parents were working a lot on themselves and going to therapy and trying to figure out. My mom had some traumas, some pretty big traumas, and that was a season of, I think they were really focused on trying to heal themselves. And every
Sure.
parent in their journey of figuring out how to self-regulate and to heal, is making mistakes. And so
Mhm.
I think there was some instability in my younger years, and then when my parents really got a lot more stability, had kind of locked into these identities and these wounds of, I'm too much for other people. I don't quite fit in. Nobody understands me. A lot of very Enneagram 4 messages that I kind of locked in on, and I learned that achieving and kind of that 3 wing and um, showing up as a successful or charismatic person got me attention and love, um, and I very much just kept trying to figure out what it was that I was missing, and I was trying to go get it.
Mhm.
So that was most of my childhood. But the problem is that most of my either dating relationships or friendships in my teen years I was attached to people that were not secure. So you may have had some friendships and some things that helped you lean into security. I kept picking people that were kind of falling apart, and
Mhm.
I wanted to save them. I wanted to help them, but it really just was constantly keeping me in this dysregulated place. And I think back to a few relationships that were actually pretty secure guys, that I got bored. I felt like there wasn't enough spark. I guess I would have said there
Mhm.
wasn't spark. They were too like normal or
Mhm.
boring or whatever. And so that I ended those relationships, but then the ones where maybe the guy I was dating was more dismissive, I felt the spark. I felt like
Mhm.
there's a chase there. I'm sort of like intrigued. And so I just kept choosing these relationships and friendships um, that were insecure.
Mhm.
And so it wasn't until my 20s when I met my husband, and really started learning more about my own inner world. I began to kind of calm some of those insecurities and start to live into my identity in Christ and the way in which I wasn't identified by these wounds of, I'm too much for people, or I don't quite fit in, or whatnot. So,
Right.
you know, you can hear some of those, like, I guess the connection and disconnection was like I did flip flop. It was, if somebody was leaning into me and treating me well, I sort of was like, I don't know what to do with this.
Right.
This is too normal.
Right.
It's not familiar, I guess.
Right.
Um, and again, my parents were wonderful. They were super attuned in a lot of ways. I just think I had some emotional chaos from even early years that just never sorted itself out, and
Mhm.
I probably would have benefited from from therapy.
Yeah.
But I was resistant to a lot of those things that my parents probably were suggesting.
Right. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so, in terms of needs and having a voice, like this fearful avoidant pattern, what would that look like?
I would say, I think having a voice and just being able to express your needs, I think just that's going to come from, I think, someone allowing you to feel safe. And I think like, I think that, well, I think there's like, it's a nuanced question because I feel like part of the inner work that, you can do in yourself when you're becoming more secure in who you are. And I feel like, for us, we're both like have a relationship with God. So I feel like when I had that connection to God, it started to change the way I viewed myself, to where I wasn't as like dependent on having to feel like everything has to be like all my needs are going to be met by another person.
Mm,
Because people are human, people are going to fail you. They're not going to mean to a lot of times, but they're just, you know what I mean? Like even the most amazing people, like they're not perfect. So that was a big, I think, turning point as far as needs and voice is like, being able to show up, um, communicate for yourself what you need in a way that is like not abrasive, like just being like, we talked before about like just I always think about like speaking the truth in love, like coming from a posture of like just being kind, like talking and
mm-hmm,
communicating. Um, and then not being afraid. And
mm-hmm.
because I feel like, you know, even with the anxious, they have such a harder time expressing their actual needs. But then you have to think it also is a type of avoidance. It's an avoidance to themselves because
Mm-hmm.
they're abandoning their own self because they're so afraid of being abandoned by someone else, but they're abandoning themselves. So it's like having that understanding your voice is who you are, and it's okay to have needs. And I think that if we can get to the place where we realize like it's okay for me to say, hey, I really would love to do that. That would mean a lot to me. That's like
Mm-hmm.
an important thing. What do you think about that? Is that something that you'd be open to? Or like having
Yeah.
conversations and not, you don't have to do it in a way that you're like forcing people or being bossy
Yeah.
and being, over the top dramatic about things. It's
Yeah.
just like speaking in a way that, um, you know, you're just, yeah, you can
Mm-hmm.
express and feel safe.
Yeah, and communicating needs is always a risk. I think there's fear that rises up, especially if you doubt that somebody's going to receive your request. Um, so just growing in an inner sense of just knowing that your voice matters, and that if you speak up and you try to negotiate or vet for your needs, that that they will hear you, or if they don't, that's more about them and it's not about you, and just having that stability to say
Mhm.
like it's still okay for me to voice this, and if I can't get this need met in this place, I'll find another way, you know.
Right. Right.
And I don't mean infidelity. I just mean
Right.
like we have emotional needs met by all kinds of wonderful people
Right.
in our life,
Right.
and so I think having that, almost just taking a pause and a breath and regulating yourself before you vet for your needs, I think is really important, especially for a fearful leaning person, because there's always, anytime it comes to yourself, you just have so many guards and self-protective things up that you're wondering, are they going to hear me? Are they going to understand me?
Mhm.
Are they going to see me? Fearful avoidance really need to be seen, heard, and understood.
Yeah.
And when people don't, they view it as a betrayal.
Mhm. Well, and I think that's why, it's just the relationship. It always just kind of goes back to relationship with self, and understanding like, people's capacity. So like if you were to vet for your needs and say something and that person, say for example, like here's a great example is, in a relationship, like say, you want to communicate more or the other person's maybe inconsistent and you don't hear from them as often as you wish or something, like being able to, in a non-threatening way, say, I love when we talk. I love hearing about how you're doing and like that connection. Um, you know, like that's great. And asking like, do you feel like we could do more of that? Like obviously not talk all the time, but like, you know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? Just like
Yeah.
kind of helping like them understand, like if you have a need where you would like to communicate more, but not doing it in a way that's but then they, like you said, they might not, that might not be
Yeah.
their lean. And so like, there's the
Mhm.
capacity issues people have too, and what they're
Sure.
used to and what they're comfortable with. And
Yeah. But
it's not
if you
always a
can
personal thing, but
stating a need in a positive way
mhm,
versus saying what you don't want them to do,
right.
because that can sound critical.
Mhm.
And so oftentimes just, if you're in this camp of fearful avoidance, remember your negative lean
Mhm.
and try to take every feeling and thought that you have and frame it into a positive. So instead
Yeah.
of, I don't want you to leave your wet towel on the floor, you know, and just, I would really appreciate, I really love it when, when you, tidy the bathroom when you're done using it, or you put a towel. I mean, it's as simple as those little
Yeah.
examples are. We can make something sound really negative and critical, or we can frame something to the positive and ask for what we need.
Right.
And that just takes practice.
Right. It is practice, and also using I statements, instead of like, yeah, you're instead of saying you never do this, and
Hmm.
like that's going to automatically make the other person
Oh yeah.
immediately go on the defense. Like they're not going
Yeah.
to, like that's going to shut them down. Whereas if you're like, I love it when, you do
Hmm.
this. It makes me feel so special. Thank you for doing that. Like,
Hmm.
so you're letting them know, you're affirming the things that mean a lot to you so that they
Yeah.
know they're not
Yeah.
having to guess.
You're saying you're a really considerate person. I love it when you have these considerate behaviors and
Right.
and it just makes me feel so good. Can you do more of that?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So we have talked a little bit about the childhood wounds.
Hmm.
I mentioned the kind of sensitivity to betrayal.
Hmm.
I know I feel that small things are a sense of a trust break, or
Hmm.
I can't trust you. So that's kind of that signal of like, if you think something's a betrayal, it's like, oh, you're not going to do that to me again,
Right.
um or I'm not going to tell you this because fill in the blank. That type of inner dialogue is trying to prevent against more hurt and more
Hmm.
betrayal.
Right.
So do you resonate with that feeling? Like, I know you've grown a lot in security, and
Hmm.
I feel like I've captured a lot of those thoughts and tried to reframe them. But what do you think about that?
Yeah. I mean, I can look back in childhood and definitely had trust issues with people for sure. Or just like things like they said they would do this. And then, I mean, it could be something so simple. And then, it wasn't done.
Mm-hmm.
So then it made me feel like, okay, well, I can't trust you that, you know, you told me that you're going to do it and you didn't. So therefore, I have to do it for myself to make sure. So I went through my life, especially the teen years and then the younger parts of my life, the younger 20s,
Mm-hmm.
um, feeling very much like I have to ultimately trust myself because I can't trust other people, because they may or they may not come through. Um, and I've grown a lot in that now. But I think a part of it was a control issue for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, you kind of feel a little alone because you just want to be, you want someone to just say something and follow through and actually do it
Mm-hmm.
and not have to be guessing and having to go check back. Like, did you do it? Did they say that they were going to do it? So I
Yeah.
think that's what's interesting about the fearful avoidant is they're always scanning and watching. They're very observant because they're going to be watching. Okay, I think I can trust this person, but I'm going to like observe and almost put them in situations to test them to see, are they actually what they say they are or what I think they
Yeah.
are. And
Yeah.
and then eventually when you realize that person, like, oh, they really do, they really have shown up a lot, like they really are trustworthy, not
Mhm.
perfect, but like I can trust them. I feel like I truly can trust that they have my best interest in mind. And
Mhm.
then I feel like then the relationship will shift where I feel like you're a lot more safer to truly like enter in. But
Mhm.
I do think the fearful avoidant will, until they can truly feel like they can trust you, they're going to be very observant and very like they're watching, you
Right.
know, your
It's
consistency.
interesting. Yeah, the trauma, the traumas of someone who develops a fearful, avoidant, insecure attachment is that hypervigilance, like you said, the scanning, like constantly looking for possible threats.
Hmm.
And so, this can actually turn into sort of a superpower of empathy and attunement because on one hand, you're trying to protect yourself from people hurting you. You're also so highly aware of the needs, feelings, emotions, subtle shifts going on with
Hmm.
other people. And that can actually overwhelm you when
Right.
they're not doing well. And so, but a lot of people who maybe would have expressed, this is where I started fearful avoidance, they become therapists and counselors and, helpers of all kinds
Hmm.
because they're so attuned to people.
Right.
So with all of these insecure attachments, they all kind of have their superpowers. They have their
Yeah.
things that they've learned to hone and be really good at, even though there's some insecurities that are um, lead to not feeling well in relationships or not feeling confident. Um, but other trauma expressions for this style is
Right.
sarcasm, isolating, just that fight response.
Hmm.
It's not the fawn, it's not the freeze. Like this is the one that will come at you.
Right.
Quick to react.
Right.
So,
And I think another thing just to mention about, the different expressions is, a lot of fearful avoidance can be like face readers. Like they can walk in a room and immediately, like I know for me, like when I would walk into a room, like I could immediately read the room. Like I could tell if there was any kind of shift
me too.
in
Mm-hmm.
someone's like body language, in their tone, like I could immediately pick up on it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and a lot of times with fearful avoidance, you will see, and I think obviously it goes, you trace it back, but like, growing up, they didn't really know, there may have been abuse in the home, or they may have had just inconsistence of trust and breaches of trust. And so like scanning and like the body language and like face reading is, I think, very common.
Mm-hmm.
And also, and like just even, yeah, just even like little small nuances of even like mouth reading, like just like you could just tell like these little small nuances, they just really pick up on fast.
Yeah. Yeah. And that would lean towards somebody becoming a highly sensitive person because your
Right.
nervous system is tuned into all the subtle shifts and the hypervigilance of
Right.
your environment. So
Hmm.
let's talk about parent responsiveness. What comes
Hmm.
to mind when you think about this type of person and the challenges that they have? What would that be like?
I mean, I think that as far as from a parenting perspective, like just the most, and obviously, people are not perfect, but just the most consistent, the better. And just being able to, once again, just modeling secure behavior like that is going to allow someone to feel safe to open up and express, you know like what you were sharing earlier about, being sent to your room to have to like feel like your feelings were too much, like there's
Mhm.
that balance, because you can understand from a family, you know if you had a child who was constantly having outbursts and tantrums, and it was affecting the entire dinner table and it's affecting the entire tone of the house and creating chaos, then
Mhm.
obviously like they have to do something to regulate that, or that would continue to
Yeah.
just create chaos. But then I think from the parent, just being able to like make that child understand like you're okay, like emotions are okay to feel. Like that's part of being human. That's our body signaling to us something when we're feeling something, and helping them learn to name the emotions. Like, and it's okay to feel those things, but you have to understand how that affects other people and
Mm-hmm.
how that affects the family. And
Yeah.
so if you need to go feel that, that's okay. Like it's okay to be angry about a situation. You didn't get the toy that you wanted,
Yeah.
or something. And like letting them know, like, it's okay. But then also like teaching them that, our actions do affect other people. So it's like that balance,
Mm-hmm.
of not making them feel like, shamed
Right.
for feeling angry, or I'm, like removing you because you're like in a way that I guess is pointing back to shame.
Yeah. And I think about what it's like, even just as a parent now, when if you're trying to calm your child, but you're dysregulated and you're not successful in helping them calm down, then you just get sometimes to a point of frustration.
Right.
And I can identify that there's sometimes I need a break. I'm just going to send my child to go calm down on their own, maybe because I'm not helping.
Right.
We're human, but I think just keeping in mind that if a child is being formed in some of these insecure behaviors, that uh, they really just want to be seen, heard, and understood. And
Mm-hmm.
so, maybe there's something. Maybe your hug isn't necessarily calming. They want to see your eye contact, or like what nonverbals might you be sending to them that they still don't feel safe, even though it's a safe environment. It may just not feel, they don't feel totally attuned to, and so they're not calming down. Or yeah, just are you going through the motions and trying to do the right things, but you're so dysregulated and not calm in your own system that you can't really help them? I mean, that's
Right.
so common.
Right.
So we all just need to be self-aware, whether you're a parent and you're trying to avoid this type of
Right.
a insecure style from happening, or you might be a parent who has this insecure style and
Mm-hmm.
you have a hard time not being reactive.
Right.
So,
Yeah. It's as much, I think, for the parent too, just to be able to recognize, like, okay, I'm feeling myself getting highly triggered. I need to walk away.
mhm,
I need to go take some deep breaths. I need to go on a walk. I need to go do something before I engage this.
yeah.
Um,
But at the
because I'm
same
going to make it.
time,
Go ahead.
communicating,
Right.
I need to take a pause and go calm. Mommy needs to go calm down. I will
Right.
come back to this. I
Right.
love you, and not just
Right.
storming out of the room.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And see, that just goes back to healthy communication.
Hmm.
And it's funny because when you think about communication, I feel like it really boils down to, it's not even complex.
Right.
It's just stopping and just saying, hey, I don't feel like I'm okay right now. I need to go take a walk. I need to go regulate,
Yeah.
um, but I love you and I will come back. I mean, just
Yeah.
that right there, just those two sentences make all the
Hmm.
difference versus you just
Yeah.
walking off and storming out.
Right. Right. And so much of the stuff is just subconscious, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We have these patterns because our brain kind of gets into these default modes, and we do what's familiar and predictable. And
Right.
it's not until you start capturing, like
Mm-hmm.
the scripture says, like, take your thoughts captive to the obedience of Christ. And what does that look like? Well, it's not going to be natural.
Mm-hmm.
um like you have to be intentional
Right.
to capture these things and to reframe them and to try a new pattern.
Right.
So what do you think about some of the set beliefs, that this style might have?
I think a lot of them have a deep rooted core feeling of shame,
Hmm.
not feeling like they're, good enough, just for whatever, reason that
Hmm.
got set in them. Um, so, you know, I think a lot of times, like even when witness, breakups with like fearful avoidance or avoidance in general, like, a lot of times, you know, they don't think that they're living up to, you know, they just, like for example, like a lot of the um, things you might hear is like, I feel like you deserve better. I don't feel like I'm good enough for you. Like, and, a lot of times people can think, well, that just sounds like very taboo. Like, that's just this excuse they're saying. And it's like, no, they really do feel like they're really not good enough. Like, there's a true,
Mm-hmm.
deeper thing going on in them. And
Yeah.
just a lack of self worth and self esteem. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I can almost hear it, all the fearful avoidance that I've known that, I'm just broken. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
broken. I'll always be broken. This feeling that something is just so wrong with me, and I don't know what the fix is, and again, that goes back to shame. Um, but it's a sense of instability that they don't know how to find their anchor. Um, they don't know what that is, and that's security. And I
Mm-hmm.
know you and I, from a faith perspective, it is found in Christ. It's found in God. We have this this rock that we can depend on, that will not fail us, because I think we're looking all around us for someone else to save us, and it's just never totally going to happen the way that we want it to,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely looking to something beyond just yourself. Like, if I had to just only depend on myself, I know I'm not perfect and I can fail and mess up things. I know other people around me that are not perfect and are fail and mess up things. So it's like having your security in something that doesn't, like that was a huge game changer, I think, for a lot of people when they truly find Christ, because not only do they become more self-accepting and start to actually love themselves the way Christ
Hmm.
loves them. That's the first, I think, major step, is they start not having this negative bias about themselves as much anymore, because they're like, wait
Right.
a minute, God created me. Like, he created me with intention. Like, he loves me. Like, I don't have to perform and work to be
Hmm.
loved by him. Like, I'm just loved because I'm his child. Like, that's amazing. And
Hmm.
he loves me on my best and my worst day. Like, it's like, it just gives you this freedom to like have this base of like, no matter what happens, I'm not perfect. I'm not, my people around me I love aren't perfect. And it like just it's like a freedom starts to happen,
Hmm.
where you just don't expect, I think, as much um of yourself or other people to fill those parts that they're never actually able to fill. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? Because they're
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
just
That type.
creates this harmony that like, and then it makes you not only feel more at peace, but then you can show up for other people where you're not putting all this pressure and all this
Hmm.
like you have to live up to this for me to feel good, or
Hmm.
for me to feel whole. You have to give me all this time and attention and love and
Yeah.
reassurance all the time. Like, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's just this general sense for a fearful avoidant that, like, people are unpredictable and the world is not safe and people will let you down and I'm broken and everything is like everything's
Mm-hmm.
gone to hell in a handbasket.
Right.
Like, just we I think, and I say we, you and I guess, if we look at, if we lean into that insecurities, there is just that negative bent, but faith really does give such a sense of perspective to say, like, no, that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, people do fail you sometimes, but it's not all bad, and I am safe even when they do fail me, even when they don't keep their commitments. That doesn't mean it's all about betrayal. It means that they're human and I'm human and there's grace for all of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm. So, what about regulation? I know we've talked a little bit about this. What does it look like um, to self-regulate?
I think just learning how to be able to be one step aware of yourself, to where instead of just getting reactional to something, learning how to um, just like pause for a couple of seconds, before
Hmm.
you respond, or recognizing like I'm feeling like what are my emotions that I'm feeling, and then taking the moments that we need. If we need to go have a self-care day where we just go have some quiet time and we get away from everything, or we go journal, or we go for a walk, or we go breathe outside and just take a second to breathe in the air and just like stand and just acknowledge the trees, acknowledge the sky. I mean, it's just something so simple as that. It has this way of recentering the
Mm-hmm.
soul and your mind. And it's just like, whew. And then I think also, like, for me, I feel like sometimes things that we really stress about, like, is this even going to be something I think about a year from now? Like, is this really, am I making a bigger deal of this in the moment than
Right.
it actually is? Like, it's just kind of having, and then also just like positive self-talk, like learning how to, yeah, just learning how to be kind to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But also just like being gracious with yourself and gracious with others,
Mm-hmm.
and learning how to communicate.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Yeah, I definitely think because of the hypervigilance of this style, knowing how to sense into your body and almost discharge some of the stuff you absorb from being so like highly sensitive and aware of other people's nonverbals and walking into a room and feeling all the things that you feel. This person is going to really benefit from, like you said, taking a deep breath or doing a body scan like head to toe and feeling into what is really happening and what am I absorbing. And a practice I really have always liked is five senses. Like name one thing that you can see, one thing that you can hear, one thing you can smell, one thing you can taste, one thing you can touch. And like just getting in touch with your physical senses brings you into the present moment. Um, and then, like you said, that positive self talk, being able to have evidences that you can remember that
Hmm.
are positive. So like you might have a negative bias towards, oh, they always do this, or, they never come through for me, or they don't care about me, or whatever the negative message about
Hmm.
your partner or your relationship might be. Having almost like an evidence journal. I coach people to do that, to keep an evidence journal that says, my husband, he showed up, he came home from work and brought me chocolates and my favorite drink or something, and I remember these little ways that he shows up for me and he shows he cares and he's intentional, and I'm writing them down and I'm pulling them out when I truly, my system is telling me it's all bad.
Hmm.
But it's not. We have a lot of evidence. It's just our brain latches on to the negative because it thinks
Hmm.
that's how it's going to protect you.
Hmm. Yeah,
So,
or in that moment, yeah, just your emotions just get the best of you. And a lot of
mm-hmm,
times I think they know, like, people know deep down, like, oh, like, I know this person loves me, like, I know this person's for me, but like in that moment, I'm just angry
mm-hmm,
and my emotions are just, getting the
mm-hmm.
better.
Yeah. And that you mentioned the push pull a little bit, and I feel
Hmm.
like if we talked about the self-sabotaging
Hmm.
behaviors of a fearful avoidant, that would definitely come to mind. On
Right.
the top of the list is like it's kind of that I need you, um, I want you, but then
Hmm.
I'm going to sabotage the connection and
Hmm.
then get you to push me away, or I'm going to push you away,
Hmm.
you know, um, because you totally don't trust that they're going to consistently show up for you.
Right. And I think one thing we didn't mention is I feel like there's different like types of avoidance. Like I feel like certain Enneagram numbers, which we'll talk about, lean more to an avoidant side just by nature. That
Yeah.
doesn't mean they actually have a true fearful avoidant attachment style.
Hmm.
They just may lean towards that in stress. Whereas I feel like when someone has a true fearful avoidant attachment style, they, a lot of times it is on a subconscious level. So when they are doing the push pull, they're not in their mind thinking, I'm just going to push pull this person. I'm going to come toward them and I'm going to push them away. And then
Right.
like they're not thinking about it. It's
It's
all
all
subconscious
subconscious.
level. So a lot of times they might not even realize that they're actually doing it or understand why they're doing it. And so that's
Hmm.
something that I think is very real for people, or like why, like people, and I think they start to discover it because like why every time I get into a relationship, why, I'll really like this person. And then I'll just like either lose feelings for this person, or all of a sudden, like, I get too close and it just makes me like not want to like engage them the
Mhm.
same way. And I find
Well,
myself pulling back.
and their mind will bring up all the problems. So
Mm-hmm.
they will start to pinpoint, so they may start getting close, but then there's this fear response that makes their attention look for all the bad. And then they'll find a problem. And the minute that person solves the problem, they'll find a new problem. And it's sort of like, if you're not self-aware and you're not seeing yourself do it, you just keep complaining about every
Mm-hmm.
next thing, because you're always moving. It's like you have this bar that you want them to meet, and the minute they meet it, you raise it.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
you're never going to be happy.
And I think a lot
Um,
of the flaw finding can be, very like things that are not even like a big deal. Like it could, I think that's the thing. Like when someone gets in that mindset, when they're going to, you know, self-sabotage something, because it will ultimately not feel familiar or safe, even though it could be a great, like this person could be a great person for them who's truly like showing up and loving them well and wanting a connection and communicating and like
mhm.
showing up very secure. But then at the same time, like they could say, well, this is kind of common, but like, oh, this person loves to hike. I don't like to hike. So this isn't going to work because they're always going to, I mean, they'll like, that's like little things that wouldn't necessarily constitute a breakup.
Yeah.
And I think that in time, they obviously, when they have enough time, space, and distance, they realize like, oh man, this person really cared for me. I pushed
Mhm.
them away over something that like, why did I do that? Or I heard
Right.
one fearful avoidant talk about recently, or one time he was talking about um how he's like, why did I make a big deal over like this girl was wanting a tattoo? And he's like, and I wouldn't date her anymore because she wanted a tattoo. And he's like, and then after some months went by, I'm like, why did I do that? Like, that's not that big of a deal to me. Like, but it just, like, it's like they were trying to find something that would make it not work.
Right. So common. So let's talk about things they say, things they do. Something that I probably have, and we've talked about it. It's just that I'm broken, I'm damaged. I think from the fear perspective, saying something like "you scare me" or "this," maybe the relationship scares me,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm afraid of myself in this relationship. These would be, things pinpointing that fear and anxiety is a driver.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And
it
I
could be
think, oh, go ahead.
it could be that they're saying that the other person's the problem, like going back to just that complaining, constantly having their attention be on the other person as the problem in the relationship.
Mm-hmm. And I think also, just when the relationship starts to grow, because, you get through the dating phase, the honeymoon part, and then the power struggle phase, and it then moves to more of like the stable, like you've kind of gotten past that. You're like more comfortable with each other and secure in the connection. And it's almost like it's in that part that goes right past the honeymoon stage. It's like a lot of times fearful avoidance can really start to freak out because they might like really have strong feelings for this person. And that's usually when the fearful avoidant attachment style really kicks in, where they will start pushing back. A lot of times it's not for the feeling of, I don't really like this person anymore. It's actually the opposite. It's like, I really care so much for this person. This person shows up so much for me and they're so good to me. And like, I love so many qualities about them. Like, it's like their own emotions start to scare them. And, and then I think because of the independence part, it's like, there's that piece of like, there's fears of like, engulfment, or like, is this person going to take away my independence, or
Hmm.
are they going to need, it's like they're not even putting on the person necessarily this expectation, but it's like in their fearful and avoidant mind, it's like, well, they're going to expect a lot from me and I'm not going to be able to meet it. And like, they're already
Yeah.
setting the stage for, this is just not going to work, even
Well,
though there wasn't even a problem.
it's like at the same time they have the overwhelm of the dismissive avoidant, like, but they also have the neediness and the anxiety of the anxious preoccupied at the same time going on
Right.
inside of them. So it's just so much of that unpredictable push
Yeah.
pull back and forth roller coaster up and down.
Yeah.
um, I think about how often blaming, name calling, like blame shifting, catastrophizing, these would be things they say and do in a relationship, because it's just everything's so big and
Mhm.
everything's kind of the end of the world. Or, they might be the person that keeps repeating themselves. So, you've heard the phrase beating a dead horse.
Mhm.
You know, if somebody just keeps repeating themselves, um, or reviewing the negative, even if it's been addressed or the person's apologized, that it can just be this emotional reaction to just keep going over it.
Mhm. Yeah. And I have found
Yeah,
myself doing that,
me
you
too.
know? Like, I have found that pattern in myself, and I've had to, like, learn and work on, it's like, I think it goes back to the core wound of feeling not understood.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why I would tend to do that, is because I'm like, I wanna make sure you really understand where I'm coming from. I
Yeah,
don't know if
yeah,
you do, so I'm gonna say it again. I might rephrase it
yeah,
to make sure you know.
yeah. And really what it comes down to, if we talk about the needs that a fearful avoidant really has in a relationship. So if you're listening to this and you want to understand the inner workings and the inner world of a fearful avoidance, they truly need authenticity
Mhm.
and vulnerability.
Yeah.
They need space to verbally process and to kind of be a mess, and grace to sort out their emotions, because they want to grow in security. But in order to grow in security, they have to have felt safety and
Mhm.
time to be seen, heard, and understood.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have anything else that comes to mind as far as what they would really need in the environment of a relationship?
I think they need I think someone that it's like that balance of, the other person understanding and showing up and having the consistency and being trustworthy, but also, like, not being a doormat to them either. Like, being
Mm-hmm.
able to say and communicate, but in a non-threatening way, but, um but being able to kinda hold some accountability to where they have respect for the person that they're with. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they're not gonna just get away with being able to
Yeah.
have behavior and think, "Oh, this person, they'll always be here. They don't care. They're always gonna be," you know what I mean? Like, they need to see that the person also has, like, yeah, it's like that balance of, like, I'm gonna be here for you, and I'm trustworthy, but at the same time, like, I'm gonna call you to
Mm-hmm.
whatever, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not,
Yeah.
like, not being a doormat
Like
and just, like,
rise to security. Like, I
right,
know that you are whole, you're not broken. I see the good. I see, that you're just scared, and then you're calling them to name the emotions, to take care of
right.
themselves, to not run away, but to come back and engage if there's conflict in a healthy way.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
that type of person in the life of a fearful avoidant is gold.
Mhm.
To call them into security, to usher them,
Sure.
into a place of safety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can honestly say I can really connect with that because, I've shared this, I think, once before on the podcast, but just how, I remember that was a turning point for me when I was dating, my now, husband, but like just feeling like I remember him, I'll never forget like where I was standing in college and everything. Like I remember he was like, you can tell me if something's wrong. Like, cause I was just
Yeah.
like, I'm fine. I'm fine. Like, I just wouldn't like open up and I did that
Yeah.
whole thing. And he's like, no, like, I really want to know. Like, I care about you. Like, it's okay,
Hmm.
like, and but he was consistent enough and showed up enough in that space, that I slowly started just trusting, like, okay, I can tell him how I'm really feeling. And
Hmm.
it's not scary like I thought it would be, like
Yeah.
we just can talk about it.
Yeah. So do you feel like you feel like Taylor has always been more of securely attached, and he's ushered you into this place that he's kind of lived most of his life, or
Um, I think Taylor's probably, I mean, no one is 100%
right,
secure,
right.
you know? I feel like he would, depending on the situation, he would fall either on the anxious side or secure, but overall, he's a very secure person now.
Hmm.
Um, and, you know, yeah, we've both just grown a lot in like just understanding at a young age. I mean, we got married when I was 20 and he was 21. So we had to learn quick, like,
Hmm.
we wanted to kind of break through, and we both had, very loving families, but, both of the families, just a lot of families, especially in the generation our parents came and our grandparents came in, like they didn't talk. A lot of stuff was swept under the rug. There wasn't a lot of great, healthy communication modeled. And so, um, we just decided like when we were young, like we want to do different. That's
Hmm.
something that was like very like, and I think he, being an Enneagram 7, he's very connecting, he's very communicative. And, I'm naturally, we're both outgoing. So like communication felt natural to us. It was just learning how to have the communication that felt safe.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
that's beautiful. I think, yeah, and I love that we're dropping some numbers here with the Enneagram talk, and actually in our very next episode we'll get into kind of a primer for Enneagram. So for anybody who that is not familiar for them, like just stay tuned for the next conversation, because we're going to kind of lay that out and then continue to revisit it over many episodes to help people understand the patterns of each Enneagram personality style. Um, but yeah, Ezra, I relate to what you said with your husband. My husband and I both came into marriage with a lot of insecurities, and I feel that we've had a long road of just unpacking what those are and what they're tied to. He was married once before me, and unfortunately his former wife cheated on him, so he had that trust break to navigate. And so I came into a relationship with him fresh after that betrayal and divorce, and it was very raw. He
mhm,
was very wounded in a lot of ways, but then as an Enneagram 8, putting on strength and not showing the vulnerabilities of what really happened. He did share with me a lot, and I think he really did trust me with his heart, and that's why we fell in love and got married. But
mhm,
we've had to do a lot of healing together.
mhm.
It's been a long journey, and it's been painful at times, very painful,
Yeah,
but so worth it.
it is so worth it. Yeah.
So, in terms of growth and tips for security, any last thoughts for this style? What they should focus on?
Well, I mean, I think, we're obviously in a generation, we just have so many resources at our fingertips. So I think just like getting more engaged with the content of, different attachment styles and, learning yourself what you feel it could be you, taking, quizzes that, seeing kind of, like what the dynamic looks like in your life with the people that you're in relationship with. Um, and just, taking a deeper understanding of, like asking yourself the hard questions, like figuring out what your triggers are. Where do I feel like these come from? And sometimes, we can do this just with self discovery and journaling and just really reflecting and stuff like that. But, if you really want to take it to the next level, I mean, the quickest way obviously would to be to find like a really great, you know, psychotherapist who specializes in attachment that, and it might be one of those things you don't even have for even to do it super long. Like it could just be something enough that really just like breaks the ice and helps you understand some of these core layers that may be
Hmm.
like connecting the dots. And I feel like that's where a lot of breakthrough happens is like when we can connect, like, okay, I understand why I'm this way. Like this makes sense, but I don't have to stay this way. Like
Hmm.
I can, grow in, myself and do the work. So, but
Hmm.
I do think that it's easier done with people or a person than just solely by
By
yourself.
yourself, yeah,
And then obviously
yeah.
there's, like with coaching and things like that, every little thing, it's just like chipping at it. You know what I mean? It just
Mm-hmm.
helps, the process of the healing.
Yeah. And
But
it
I do
doesn't,
think,
oh, so go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, I do think though, there really does need to be a honest look at the past though. Like, I think you
Mm-hmm.
just have to be able to like have the vulnerability with yourself to realize, like, let me look at some stuff from my past that might be hard to look at, but I want to figure out, because like almost like going back, it sounds kind of new agey, but like going back to like your inner child, because we all have still this
Mm-hmm.
14-year-old inside of us that felt this way. And even though
Yeah.
we're adults now, it's like there's still that part of us that's like the unhealed teenager that felt that at some
Yeah.
point, or the child who felt this. And I think, like, and a lot of times, I went to I went to an attachment conference in Atlanta last year, and it was just so neat because the psychotherapist was talking, and she, even talked about like how, I mean, it was just something as so simple of like having, like a paper plate, and she would sit down with the person and just like ask them questions about their childhood, and they would just draw on this paper plate of how they felt and how they, some words or things that they experienced, or colors that would, map out emotions, and then almost like telling the inner child, like going back and like
Mm-hmm.
addressing things with that inner child part of you, and
Mm-hmm.
letting you know that you're going to be okay,
Yeah.
and letting like it's almost like stepping back into those parts of us that we want to suppress or not think about, or that we were really hurt in.
Yeah.
And that right there, I think, is a lot of like the deep work that frees you up to move forward now.
Right.
But it's like not being afraid of confronting like past, because you're going
Yes.
to have healing and freedom
Yeah. And
by doing it.
all of our patterns are driven by parts of us, right? So internal family systems is a modality that a lot of therapists would potentially use to help you identify those parts. In a past episode, we talked about emotionally focused therapy, which is an attachment based modality, working with couples in relationships that helps them identify attachment wounds and heal from those. I've heard, accelerated resolution therapy is another one where, you're looking back and figuring out how to bring resolution to some of the things that you keep reenacting.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think on a practical level, as far as like coaching perspective, like I would coach somebody who, what I would coach somebody who has a fearful avoidant style is they both need to practice co-regulation as well as self-regulation. So leaning into depending on another person and trusting them and attuning with them and letting others see them, attune to them, and feeling secure in that. They also need to find ways to soothe the hypervigilance and the dysregulation that they're feeling, which we've talked about at length.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of different ways to do that in self-care, and just recognizing that many of the strategies that a fearful avoidant uses are ineffective. They make situations worse. So they have a lot more patterns from trauma that have to be rewired, that have to be changed. So, like you said, having someone to help you, whether it's a therapist, a coach, a good friend, a pastor, a groups are fantastic for this type of learning environment. We hope to offer, some groups of just discovery and learning and unpacking things and giving tips for security, but not doing it alone. It's really
Yeah.
important. So, all right, why don't you close us?
Well, we have a download on our website. It's a free attachment assessment, and you can score your patterns to see how secure you are in relationships. And again, we just love being able to talk with you guys. I hope that you've gleaned something for yourself today. And thank you so much for joining me and Jess in another episode of Transforming Us podcast.
Awesome. All right. So may you be open to everything that comes to you today because you know it is for your transformation.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Transforming Us podcast. We hope that you enjoyed the conversation and that you found it helpful. If you loved what you heard, we would really appreciate if you would take a moment and leave us a 5-star review and rating. Your support helps us reach more listeners like you.
And also, don't forget to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more relationship content. Then, if you're looking to take your growth to the next level, check out our coaching services and groups at transformingus.org.
We're here to help you transform your patterns and enjoy more secure relationships.
Until next time, in the words of Raoul Shane, you do not need to do big things. Just do small things in a big way. Then transformation will follow you.